so we can begin.
But what camera do you use for right now? What camera for?
I have all kinds of camera and equipment up.
Can I see it?
No, it's too hard to show. Okay, let's mute our microphone and we'll get started. So, today we're going to continue. We've been discussing kings and queens and royalty, and we've read fiction books about them. We talked about how authors hundreds of years ago wrote fiction stories about kings and queens because most countries in Europe had a king or a queen, and most people fantasized about being a king or a queen or a princess. That means they used their imaginations and dreamed about being a king or queen or princess. So they wrote stories about them. 300 years ago, a little bit earlier than Cinderella, Hans Christian Andersen from Germany wrote Snow White. Remember, in the story Snow White, there was an evil stepmother. You know, they give stepmothers a bad name in these stories. Are all stepmothers evil? No, of course not. But they seem to be in these stories. And she was queen, and she was beautiful. But she was very jealous and wanted to be, they use the word vain. She wanted to be the most beautiful in the land. And when Snow White was born and got old enough, she became the most beautiful princess in the land. And the queen was very jealous. So she ordered the huntsman to kill Snow White. But the huntsman couldn't do it. So he told Snow White to run away into the forest and never come back. She was scared and alone, but she found this little bitty cottage in the forest and went inside. Who lived in the little bitty cottage? Do you guys remember? Raise your hand. Adeline?
The 7 doors.
The 7 dwarfs lived in that little cottage. Very good. Were they evil and mean, or were they kind and gentle?
They were kind.
Yes, they were kind to her. And they let Snow White stay with them. Now, the evil queen ended up finding out about Snow White because she asked her mirror again if she was the fairest. And the mirror said, "You are very beautiful. However, Snow White is still fairer than you." So she disguised herself as a peddler woman. That's usually someone without a lot of money who hundreds of years ago they would go around selling things like fruit, food. And she disguised herself as a peddler woman and made a poisonous apple to give Snow White. Snow White took the apple and dropped to the ground and fell fast asleep. And that made those 7 dwarfs so sad. One day, yes.
I want to go bathroom.
Okay, go ahead, Nicole. Try to do that before class. One day, a prince was riding by and saw the beautiful Snow White from a window. And he wanted to see her, so he went in, lifted her head. The apple fell out. Snow White awoke, and she became the most beautiful maiden and got to marry the prince and live happily ever after. Well, today we are going to listen to another story, but this story is titled Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs as told by the 7 Dwarfs. It's in a book that has a table of contents with lots of other fairy tales inside the book as well. So let's listen and then we're going to discuss the story together. I think you're going to like it. It's fun. Let's listen.
Another other side of the story, fairy tales with a twist. This book has 5 stories in it. In this video, we'll be reading about Snow White. Of course, you think Snow White was the most perfect girl in the world. Why, just look at her. But there's more to the story, and the dwarfs behind this page are ready to give you an earful.
Uh-oh.
Seriously, Snow White was so forgetful. The story of Snow White as told by the dwarfs. Written by Nancy Lowen and illustrated by Gerald Gerlace. I love Snow White dearly. She's a beautiful person, inside and out. But honestly, the girl's got a mind like a leaky bucket. Here's the real story of Snow White and the 7 dwarves. My name, by the way, is 7. We dwarves used to have real names, but Snow White couldn't remember them. One day we came home from the mines to find our cottage door open. We thought we'd been burgled. But no, it was just a lovely little girl, sound asleep. In the morning she had quite a story to tell. "Hello," she said, "I'm Snow White. The queen sent me into the woods and a hunter was supposed to kill me, but he was nice and let me go. And I wandered a long time in the woods. I guess I'm very pretty and that's why the queen doesn't like me. I'm Snow White. Would it be alright if I lived with you? I love playing house, and keeping house for real wouldn't be all that different, would it? Did I tell you my name was Snow White?" Wow, did she have energy. Life with Snow White was interesting. She'd forget to turn on the stove. She'd forget to turn it off. She'd make banana cream pie and forget the bananas. She'd knit scarves that were 10 feet long, just because she forgot to stop. On the bright side, she laughed at all of our jokes, and she never complained about anything.
Okay, so
Years passed.
what is the issue with Snow White? What are the dwarfs saying about her? Estelle?
I think they're saying about all the things she could do, like make banana pie and talk about jokes.
Well, they're saying that she's really forgetful. Remember, the 7 dwarfs said, "My name is 7. I used to have a real name like Bob or Joe, but she kept forgetting it." So now they just gave them each a number. He said her mind was like a leaky bucket, which means she had a hard time remembering things and would forget things a lot. She'd forget to turn off the stove or turn on the stove. She made banana cream pie, but forgot the bananas. And she would knit a scarf that was 10 feet long because she'd forget to stop knitting. So she was really forgetful. But she was very nice.
Snow White grew up, but she didn't really change. She remained her sweet, charming, forgetful self. Then, one day, 5 heard a rumor. "The queen knows Snow White is alive," he told us. "The magic mirror spilled the beans." We gave Snow White orders to stay in the cottage. She was not to open the door to anyone. We knew the evil queen would try to hurt her. But Snow White quickly forgot. Twice we came home to find her lying on the floor. It was clearly the work of the queen. The first time, Snow White couldn't breathe. She was wearing a brand new corset that was laced too tightly. The second time, she had a poisoned comb in her hair. All the queen had to do was dress up as an old woman and offer something pretty for sale. Any thoughts of being careful went right out of Snow White's head. We posted reminders. We even wrote, "Do not open the door," in the syrup on her pancakes.
Okay, so the reason Snow White kept letting the queen in, according to the 7 dwarfs, was because she was so forgetful that as long as the queen was dressed as an old woman and offered her something pretty, Snow White would forget that she's not supposed to let strangers in and let her in anyway. So they put a bunch of sticky notes everywhere to remind her.
But once again, we came home to find Snow White on the floor. This time, we couldn't help her. There was no corset to loosen or comb to remove. We thought she was dead, killed by a magic spell. And yet, days passed, and she remained as lovely as ever. It's like she's forgotten how to wake up, Five whispered. We couldn't make ourselves bury her, so we placed Snow White in a glass coffin and brought her to a spot on the mountainside. We took turns guarding her. Thank goodness that's not the end of the story. One day I heard voices in the woods. No, Your Majesty, it's not time for lunch. We had our lunch an hour ago. Don't you remember? All right, silly me. Suddenly, I was face to face with the prince. But he barely noticed me. He couldn't take his eyes off Snow White. What happened to her? He asked. What's her name? I told him the whole story. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, he breathed. Those lips, those eyes. What did you say her name was? Could I take her with me? Now that I've seen her, I don't think I can live without her. What silky hair she has. Tell me again, what's her name? I smiled. The prince reminded me of a certain someone. We were bringing Snow White back to the cottage to the other door.
So, who does the prince remind them of? Snow White, right? Because he's real forgetful.
Forced to say goodbye. Without a warning, the prince stopped and turned around. Hey, what about lunch? He asked. The servant slipped, the coffin slid, and Snow White coughed. I've never heard such a beautiful sound. Out of her throat flew a bit of rosy red apple. Rosy red poisoned apple, that is. She sat up. Did someone say something about lunch? She asked. Yes, Snow White married the prince, of course. The queen actually showed up at the reception, if you can believe it. Everyone threw dinner rolls at her and booed so loudly that she ran away and was never heard from again. Things are pretty much back to normal now. When it gets cold outside, we're grateful for our 10-foot scarves. And every once in a while, we make a banana cream pie without any bananas, just for old time's sake. Fairy tales have been around a long time and often have many different versions. What version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs do you know best? How is it different from this one? How is it the same?
Okay. So
Miss Kate,
uh-huh.
I couldn't really hear the video. So did the queen run away or did Snow White run away?
Oh, I'm sorry you couldn't hear it very well. The queen ran away. They threw dinner rolls at her when she tried to show up at the wedding. So, okay, in that story, the fairy tale of Snow White was written hundreds of years ago, and it became very popular, but it was written in German, and not every country had the same language, so people would tell the story differently. So there's a lot of different versions of Snow White. For example, in the Disney version that you may be used to, when Snow White ate the poison apple, she was put into a deep sleep, and only her true love's kiss could wake her. That's different from the version we read yesterday in this version. Also in this version, the queen came to Snow White not one time, not 2 times, but 3 times. The first time she gave her a corset, which is kind of like, it was the top part of your dress, and it had ribbons in the back that you would string tight and make a pretty bow. And the queen strung the ribbons too tight, and Snow White couldn't breathe. Then the second time when the queen came, she put a poisonous comb in Snow White's hair. But the dwarfs were able to take the comb out. The third time, Snow White ate the poisonous apple, and the dwarfs didn't know because they couldn't find it. That's different than the version that we read last week. So, let's talk about the version that we read today. Who were the main characters in this story? Raise your hand and tell me. Adeline, tell me one.
The evil queen.
Okay, it had the evil queen. So we'll just write queen. Very good. Who else were some of the characters in the story? Russell. Yeah, it also had Snow White. And the 7 dwarfs. Okay, where did this story take place? It still had the same setting, didn't it? It took place in a castle. Oops. And in a cottage, the 7 dwarfs cottage. Then we've got our problem and our solution. This is where it's different. What was the problem in the story that we just read? What was the problem that was in that story? Carolyn?
Snow White eat the poison apple.
She did, and that was in our story from last week. But the biggest problem they had with Snow White was that she was very forgetful. She was Snow White. Oops. Snow White
那个什么谁他也傻呀？但是
was
Prince 呀，他也
他记性不好。
为什么？
forgetful. She was forgetful. And that was a big problem because she kept on letting the evil queen in and the queen kept on hurting her. How did that problem end up getting solved? Russell, did you want to add anything else?
为什么这个坡他为什么那个他们结婚时候他也跑来了？那个
你想看了没？
Let's call in another
为
friend.
什么扔啥呀？面包不能用石头吗？
Meet your mic, Russell.
因为你的外地上会有石头吗？大家都在吃晚饭呢，对不对？
Oh, it's not Russell, it's Carolyn. Okay, I'm sorry. Russell, go ahead and unmute your mic and talk. I'm sorry, Russell. How did they solve the problem of Snow White being so forgetful? Good. That's right. So the apple fell out of her mouth, which was good. That happened in the first one, but it happened differently. This time, the prince found Snow White in a glass coffin or a glass case, and they were carrying it back to his castle when he was very forgetful also, and he stopped and turned around because he forgot if they had lunch or not, and the servants dropped the glass case, and that's when Snow White fell out and the apple came out of her mouth. Very good, friends. Well, that was fun.
Why did all the servants fall down when the prince looked back?
Okay, because they were walking behind him, and he was walking, and then he went, oh, I forgot. Did we have lunch? And when he stopped, all of a sudden, they were focusing on carrying the glass casket, and they stopped, and it made them drop the casket, or the case. Adeline, what's your question?
Can I show you something?
At the end. So, that was this version of Snow White. Tomorrow, I have one more different version of a fairy tale to read with you guys. It'll be our last one. And then on Thursday, we're going to do a fun 100th day activity. And Friday, we're going to do a fun science activity. So this week in Listening and Learning, I'm so excited. We have so many fun things to do. Russell, did you have a question? I saw your hand up. What's your question? Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I need to switch the E and the L. Thank you. Okay. All right, friends. I will talk to you guys. Or see you guys tomorrow morning. If you want to stay on and share something with me, you can. But for now, let's quietly go. Bye, friends.
Bye. Bye.